Sarah woke up feeling like she had run a marathon in her sleep. Her body ached, her head pounded. This had become a regular occurrence. Every morning she woke up feeling drained and sore, as if she had been through a physically demanding ordeal. She couldn't understand it. She ate a healthy diet. She got what she thought was enough sleep. Yet the exhaustion persisted. Sarah tried to brush it off as stress. She had a demanding job and the usual anxieties of life. But deep down, a nagging feeling told her that something wasn't right. This wasn't normal tiredness. This was something else. She confided in her friends, but they offered the usual platitudes. Get more rest. Maybe you're overworked. Their words offered little comfort. Sarah knew something was wrong. She just couldn't put her finger on it. Sarah had been dating Mark for almost a year. He was everything she ever wanted in a man. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to genuinely care for her. They had met through mutual friends and hit it off immediately. Their relationship progressed quickly. Soon they were spending most of their time together. Mark was the perfect gentleman. He would surprise her with flowers, cook her dinner, and listen patiently to her problems. Sarah felt like she had found the one. She had never felt so loved and cherished. Her friends and family adored him. He seemed to fit in perfectly with her life. Sarah felt truly happy for the first time in a long time. She believed she had found her soulmate in Mark. He was her rock, her confidant, the one person she felt she could truly trust. As the exhaustion worsened, Sarah noticed something else. Strange bruises began appearing on her body. They were purplish marks, mainly on her arms and legs. She couldn't recall bumping into anything that would have caused them. The bruises were a mystery. She asked Mark if he had noticed them, but he seemed unconcerned. "You must have bumped into something," he'd say casually, dismissing her concerns. But Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. The bruises, coupled with the relentless fatigue, made her uneasy. She started to question everything. Was she imagining things? Was she simply clumsy? Or was something more sinister at play? The thought sent shivers down her spine. She tried to rationalize the bruises. Maybe she was sleepwalking and bumping into furniture. Maybe she was more stressed than she realized. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. Driven by a growing sense of dread, Sarah decided to see a doctor. She described her symptoms: the debilitating fatigue, the unexplained bruises, the feeling that something was just not right. The doctor listened patiently, ordering a series of tests to rule out any underlying medical conditions. Days later, the test results came back. The doctor's expression was grave. "Sarah," he began, "we found traces of benzodiazepines in your system." Sarah's mind raced. Benzodiazepines? Those were sedatives. She didn't take any medication like that. "But how is that possible?" she stammered, her voice trembling. The doctor's next words sent a chill down her spine. "These drugs are not typically found in the body unless they are ingested intentionally," he explained gently. Sarah's world seemed to crumble around her. Someone was drugging her. But who? And why? Section 5. Disturbing Possibilities. A horrifying realization began to dawn on Sarah. Could Mark be drugging her? The thought was terrifying, unbelievable. But the evidence was there. The benzodiazepines in her system, the unexplained bruises, the constant fatigue. It all pointed to something sinister. She remembered incidents where she'd wake up feeling disoriented, unsure of how she'd gotten to bed. Mark would always brush it off, saying she'd fallen asleep watching TV. But now those incidents took on a chilling new meaning. The more Sarah thought about it, the more convinced she became. The trust she had so blindly placed in Mark began to waver. She had to know the truth. She had to find out if her boyfriend, the man she loved and trusted, was the one responsible for her terrifying ordeal. Sarah knew she couldn't confront Mark directly. Not yet. She needed proof. She needed evidence. And so a plan began to form in her mind. A plan to expose the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Section 6. Uncovering the Truth. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, Sarah purchased a hidden camera. She carefully concealed it in their bedroom, hoping to catch Mark in the act. The wait was agonizing. Every day felt like an eternity. She went through the motions of her life, pretending everything was normal, all the while consumed by fear and suspicion. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. Sarah retrieved the camera and sat down to review the footage. As the images flickered across the screen, her blood ran cold. The footage showed Mark behaving suspiciously. He was preparing her nightly cup of tea, his back to the camera. But as he turned, Sarah saw him drop something into her drink. Her heart pounded in her chest. Later that night, the camera captured even more disturbing footage. It showed Sarah behaving erratically, stumbling around the room, clearly under the influence of something. Mark was trying to restrain her, his face a mask of anger. The footage was undeniable. Mark was drugging her. Section 7. The confrontation. Armed with the evidence, Sarah knew she had to confront Mark. She waited until they were both home, her heart pounding in her chest. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Mark seemed surprised, but agreed. Sarah took a deep breath and showed him the footage from the hidden camera. As the images played out before him, the color drained from his face. He had no explanation, no denial. He simply sat there, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Why, Mark?" Sarah whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. "Why would you do this to me?" Mark finally looked up, his eyes filled with a strange mix of shame and defiance. What he said next sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "I did it for you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah was stunned. For her? How could drugging her possibly be for her? Section 8. A twisted explanation. Mark's explanation was as bizarre as it was disturbing. He claimed he drugged her because he loved her too much. He said she was too high-strung, too stressed, and that the drugs helped her relax. He claimed he was doing her a favor by giving her a break from her hectic life. Sarah listened in disbelief. His words were absurd, delusional. He had violated her trust in the most horrific way, and yet he seemed to believe he was doing something noble. "You don't get to decide what's best for me," Sarah shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "Drugging me is not love, Mark, it's abuse." Mark tried to defend himself, but his words fell on deaf ears. Sarah was done listening to his twisted logic. She grabbed her phone and called the police. As the sirens approached, Sarah felt a strange sense of relief wash over her. The nightmare was finally over. Section 9. Picking up the pieces. The aftermath of Mark's betrayal was brutal. Sarah felt like she was living in a fog, struggling to come to terms with the fact that the man she loved had drugged her for months. The emotional scars ran deep. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She was plagued by nightmares and flashbacks. The trust she had so readily given to Mark was shattered, replaced by a deep sense of paranoia and distrust. She felt broken, violated, lost. But amidst the pain and confusion, a flicker of determination began to burn within Sarah. She refused to let Mark's actions define her. She would not be a victim. She would heal. She would rebuild her life. With the support of her loved ones and a therapist, Sarah began the long and arduous journey of recovery. Section 10. Seeking justice. Mark was arrested and charged with aggravated assault and unlawful restraint. The case sent shockwaves through their community. Friends and acquaintances were horrified, struggling to comprehend how someone they knew could commit such a heinous act. The trial was a harrowing experience for Sarah. She had to relive the trauma of Mark's abuse in front of strangers. But she stood tall, her voice unwavering as she testified against him. The jury found Mark guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to a significant prison term. The verdict brought a sense of closure, but it couldn't erase the pain he had inflicted. Sarah knew that the road to healing would be long and challenging, but she was determined to move forward, to reclaim her life and her sense of self. Section 11. Finding strength. Years later, Sarah is a survivor. The trauma of Mark's abuse still lingers, but it no longer defines her. She has rebuilt her life, finding joy and love again. She is an advocate for victims of domestic violence, sharing her story to raise awareness and empower others to break free from abusive relationships. Sarah's story is a stark reminder that abuse can take many forms. It can happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, or social status. It's a story about the importance of trust, the devastation of betrayal, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Sarah's journey is a testament to the power of courage, hope, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, healing is possible.